Okay, so I just want to start with a little bit of a review of where we are and also what we talked about last week. So we'll do this every week because everything is building on itself. So this is our fifth week in the 10 foundational meditations course. And every meditation that we've done has been laying a foundation for the next meditation we do. That's not always true. When we get to the end, we'll do some meditations that are sort of a little bit off to the side, but so far that's true. We're building up a set of tools. Now, ultimately, after you've heard all 10 of these, and I've said this before, but I'm saying it again, you may just go back to number 2 or number 3 and just focus on that, and that's fine, but you'll still have it'll still be useful to have known about the other meditations in order to get the most out of whatever meditation you do. Because ultimately, meditation is a holistic practice. As you get deeper and deeper into any technique, you'll start to uncover the other techniques sort of naturally, automatically. And a few pointers ahead of time can make those developments happen more quickly. So we begin by learning that meditation is just the ability to direct our attention, to build concentration over time, and to be able to hold our attention on what we decide to hold it on. And we learned that if we look around our life and we start realizing that we have options about where we can put our attention, we realize that our options are actually pretty good. That if you look at the shopping cart or the grocery store of places we could put our attention, there are shelves and shelves full of pretty good things. And yes, there's a few objects we don't like looking at, and we seem to be really obsessed with them. But if we actually can control our attention, then we can pick from all these other options and help calm our nervous system, help bring a better quality of life. In the second meditation, we focused on acceptance. That's a certain way of attending to things. That is, we're not running away from anything. We're not pushing anything. We're not pushing anything away. We are looking to experience the world as it actually is. And part of doing that will allow us to realize that the world is not as bad as our mind says it is. That's part of what will happen. But it will stop the struggle with our life that we have. By practicing acceptance, we stop our automatic resistance to our life that you may not know you have, but we all do have. And it's rooted in the way our mind and body has evolved to constantly be struggling to make our life better than it is right now. And there's something beautiful in that, but it's also the source of all our suffering. So when we can unlearn that habit, then we can engage with our life from this place of acceptance with vast reduction in the amount of suffering. So then we want to apply this attention to see what it's like to apply this attention to everything in our world, to our whole experience. If we really want to understand ourselves and understand our lives, we want to first look at everything in our life and see what's there. And what I've been sort of suggesting and what we're uncovering is that our life experience is made up of our sensory experience. It's made up of what we sense. So the first place to look is just outside in the world. How do we experience the outside world? Well, the only way we genuinely experience the outside world is to receive sensory information from the outside world. So everything that comes from out there, we must feel it or taste it or see it or hear it, right? Or smell it. Or if you think there's other senses, we must sense it in some way. And so we can start using our concentration and our mindfulness to attend to these senses to really see how our outside world is being created, how our idea of the outside world is being created. And that includes all our problems with the outside world, which is where we think most of our problems are. So by really attending to feel or hear or see, we will understand our experience of other people better. We'll understand our experience of our job better. We'll understand our experience of politics better. We'll understand our response to the way our experience of how the world is made. Now, this laid the groundwork by learning to pay attention to the basic sensory experience of hearing, which is pitch and loudness and so on, or seeing, which is color and light and dark and so on, or feeling, which is vibration and heat and so on. By learning to pay attention to those basic building blocks of our experience, we established a skill that we could then apply to our inner world as well. So we first practiced on the outer world, because the outer world, for the most part, when we actually look, is a resource. It's pleasant. It's fine. This couch is fine. This table is fine. That painting is fine. The sounds in my room are fine. The smell in my room is fine. The feeling of the ground is fine. My clothes on my body feel fine, so on and so on. So we learn to build up our concentration on things that are easier to focus on, that cause our nervous system to calm down. And then we learn to apply it into our interior self. Because our interior self is made up of the same stuff. How do we know we're having a thought? We have a sensory experience of a thought. We either hear that thought, oh boy, I got to go pick up some milk. Boy, I really suck. Boy, I'm better than that person, right? Whatever those thoughts are, right? We hear it in our head. It's babbling along. And we checked for that. We looked inside, and you can go back to the last session and check that. Or we see a thought. We have an imagination. We have imagined something happening. We remember something happening. We think something might happen in the future, and we might talk about it, but we also picture it and imagine it. So if you're having thoughts, then you are experiencing them through your senses, not through your eyeballs and ears, but through your mind's senses, right? So after something comes in your ears, it goes into an auditory processing part of your brain. After something comes in through your eyes, it goes into a visual processing part of your brain. Now, what's amazing and not surprising when you think about it, but evolutionarily, how did our brain allow us to work with our thoughts? Well, it said, let's just use this auditory processing thing, which already thinks about language because there's other people talking to us, to think about our own thoughts. Let's use this visual processing thing to think about our own thoughts, to see our own thoughts, right? So we hear and see our thoughts with the same parts of our brain that we hear and see the outer world. So if you want to pay attention to your thoughts, if you want to experience your thoughts, if you want to understand how your thoughts are generating your reality, you can pay attention to them by focusing on the sounds and pictures in your head. Now, this has all sorts of insights associated with it, and I can't get into all of them in this basic course. Some of these insights are psychological, actually, right? As you start to pay attention to your thoughts, this is not what you're supposed to be doing when you're meditating, but inevitably you will start to hear and realize patterns in your thinking, which will reveal aspects of your psychology to yourself. And sometimes just the revelation that you're mean to yourself so much in your head will make you be more kind to yourself all on its own. You won't even need to do any extra work. Just the seeing of it, making conscious the patterns, will help you adjust those patterns. So some of what happens when we start to focus on our thoughts is our psychology gets laid bare to us. It is not the point of meditation to investigate and uncover our psychology, but it is a beneficial side effect of becoming with an accepting attitude towards our thinking, so that we really realize how we're thinking. So some of the insights are psychological, but some of the other insights that come along with focusing on our thoughts are deeper and more spiritual. What I mean by that is there are more spiritual insights about who you really are, about what your deep nature is made of. Because the truth of the matter is, most of us walk around thinking that we are our body and we are our thoughts. That's what we think we are. And there's some sense in which that's true. There's some sense in which the character that plays out our life is made up of this body and these thoughts. But at a much deeper sense, it's not true. And you start to see that when you notice that you are not controlling your thoughts, right? Because now you're listening to your thoughts and you notice they arise without you deciding for them to arise. And then they go away without you deciding for them to go away. Your thoughts have their own source and power and energy and patterns. And you are not in control of that. Not only are you not in control of that, you can see that you are separate from those thoughts because you can sit here and observe those thoughts. So the thinking where you're like, I am like this, that feels like it's so you because you're saying I am this, and you're the I is the one speaking, right? So you think the thought is I, but that is an illusion of the way our language works. Because you can sit back over here and hear the phrase, I am so silly, right? You hear the phrase, I am so silly. You are not the one saying, I am so silly. It's just a sound in your head. Just as if you heard someone over there saying, I am so silly. If I heard someone on the bus go, I am so silly, I wouldn't believe that I am silly. I would think that that person over there thought they were silly, right? Well, the same thing here. We start to realize by repeatedly watching our thoughts without controlling them and just observing them, we start to create some space around our thoughts so we do not automatically identify with those thoughts. We also then realize that our thoughts, just because we think them, doesn't mean they're true. Now, that seems like an obvious thing to say, but let me tell you, for most of us, we think our thoughts are true most of the time. We think the thoughts that are just running through our head that we're not barely conscious of, we're automatically assuming the truth of them. If your thoughts are telling you you're no good, you believe it's true. If your thoughts are telling you you should be scared, you're going to automatically believe it's true, some part of you, right? If your thoughts are telling you anything, you start with the assumption that your thought is right. There's really no reason to think that. I've never measured the percentages, but I would say your thoughts are rarely true. And they have some sense of truth to them. That is, they are speaking about something that in your experience, but they are rarely fully true. And it's much easier to realize that when you disidentify with it. If someone's just talking on the bus and they're saying something, it's much easier for you to go, is that true or not? I don't know, maybe. And then you can evaluate it. But when it's you and it's coming from in your head and it's saying it's me and da 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 da, then you automatically assume that why would you be lying to yourself, right? So you start to realize your thoughts don't have to be true. And therefore you realize you don't have to believe your thoughts. You can have thoughts without believing them. And this opens up deep, these are all actually pretty deep spiritual experiences. When you really start to experience, what is it like to not believe my own thoughts? What is it like to not identify with my own thoughts? What is it like to walk through my life without trying to control my own thoughts or even think that I am controlling them? Okay, so those are consequences of that practice. You don't need to focus on those aspects. They come out automatically from regularly paying attention to your thoughts in this way. It can be useful to see how that might work. It can speed things up a little bit. But the goal isn't to come up with a new belief, like, I am not my thoughts. That's a new belief. The goal is to relate to our thoughts in a certain way where we start to see the world as if we are not our thoughts. We start to experience the world as if we are not our thoughts. And just think about, for a second, what freedom that might be like. What if when your thoughts are telling you you should be scared, you no longer automatically believe that? What if when your thoughts tell you you need to worry, you no longer automatically believe that? Okay, so everything so far has been reviewed. So we might go a little long on the talk today. So now I want to talk about emotions. So an emotion is one of the more complex subunits of a human psychology. An emotion is made of thoughts and feelings in the body. Most of us in the West are very aware of the thought part of our emotions. But the truth is that an emotion is like an iceberg, and the thought part is the part that's mostly above the water, There's some thoughts that are under the water too, like we don't really pay attention to them. They're kind of unconscious as well, of course. But then the vast majority of that emotional feeling, the power, let's put it that way, the power of that emotional feeling is under the water. Okay. And that where is that? It's in the body, in the body. And we know this. When we get anxious, our heart speeds up. When we get nervous, we get butterflies. We know this. We might get our throat might tighten up a lot. We know this intellectually and maybe notice some of those things, but those are the barest like bones noticings. When you really start to feel any emotion, there's a very complex thing that happens throughout the body. In fact, you can understand how complex your thoughts are, right? There's just your thoughts could say almost anything. Your thoughts could generate almost any picture. They can be very complex. They can also be incredibly simple and boring when you pay attention. My gosh, I say the same thing to myself over and over again. So they can be boring, but they also have the capability of being super complex. Same thing with our feeling in our body. Okay. So, say anxiety. Here's the places that we're most likely to feel anxiety. Now, you can feel it anywhere. In fact, for instance, I have a fear of heights. The place I fear that, where I feel that first is in my feet, if I pay attention. My feet actually get activated when my fear of heights starts to get activated. So it's what I'm about to say. You can feel these things anywhere in your body. But let's go through the normal places. Where might you feel anxiety? Well, classic place is nervousness in your belly, like a tightness, a um, a bubblingness, a butterflyness. Those are three different feelings, right? I mean, you can actually affect your digestion, right? So that when you have to go to the bathroom or not, whether you have constipation or not, like that can be affected by your anxiety, and you can feel that change if you pay attention. So in the gut, we all understand that you might feel nervousness in your gut. Most of us, I shouldn't say all of us. Some of us are very disconnected from the body, and that's understandable given our history. But most of us understand you can feel in the gut. But there are 100 ways it can show up in just the gut. Like I said, it could be a tightness, a constriction. It could be a bubbliness or a kind of energy, like a lightness to it. It could be a sinking feeling. That's a whole different sensation, right? Sinking feeling in your gut or a nauseous feeling in your gut, something moving in the direction of nausea. And again, there are degrees of all of this. Do you hear what I'm saying? So I just mentioned the gut, and there's all these ways you could feel it in your gut. There's ways you could feel it in your throat when you get nervous. If you start stuttering or you speak a little quieter or your voice, you ever notice your voice getting kind of constricted, right? When you get nervous, you might feel it in your throat. And again, in a whole host of different ways. It affects your breathing. So you might feel that anywhere in your breathing. You might feel it in your face. Embarrassment is a kind of feeling that you feel in your face. Sadness is a feeling you feel in your face. You might grit your teeth in fear. I can just go down, I can go down, I can list dozens of normal ways of just understanding how you might feel an emotion in your face. Tears or sadness, even if you're not crying, you might feel it in your eyes, or so on and so on. So all these locations on the front of the body, because emotions are in the body, are also signaling to the society you live in, to your culture, to your family, to your friends, to everyone around you, what you're feeling. In fact, I just heard, I don't remember who told me this, but tears that you get from pain look different than tears you have from sadness. And there's a protein in the tears from sadness that make the tears bigger so that they're more visible, because that's more about communicating to your group, your social unit, what's happening for you internally. So our emotions are often in the front part of our body, throat, face, throat, heart, solar plexus, gut, all the way down into our root chakra. That's where we'll feel a lot of our emotions. That's also where we'll sort of express our emotions. You can tell somebody who's like this, their chest, they're feeling something in their chest, they're protecting it, they're putting their hands over their gut, right? You can tell, even if you're not conscious of it, you can sense a certain kind of emotional attitude. If they're like this, you sense a different emotional attitude. So this is where we will feel all these complex feelings that are the basis for what we call emotions. Now, our emotions, the way we use those in our everyday life, are a complex of this feeling and the thoughts that those feelings generate in our head. And a feeling is kind of a process. It's constantly moving around, like it's vibrating here and it's generating thoughts, and the thoughts go through, and then the thoughts maybe make us feel something, right? If I say to you something scary, there's a spider on your head, right? Then your body immediately has a reaction to that, right? That's just a thought I gave you. A spider is in your head. That causes a feeling in your body. Now, that feeling in your body causes more thoughts in your head. I got to get this off me. I'm in danger, right? Okay. Pictures of whatever you have, fangs, right? So there's a loop going on, or there's a series of loops. The talking thoughts influence the picture thoughts influence the talking thoughts influence the body influences the talking thoughts, the body influences the picture thoughts, right? The body influences the body, right? So you start getting tight in your gut, then you start getting tight in your chest, so on and so on. So an emotion is this process of your whole body holistically trying to prepare itself for whatever the emotion says is happening in the world. Fear is the easiest one to show, to explain. But if you're in danger, your whole body needs to respond. So it's got to talk to itself. So one part of your body gets a sense, oh, there's something on my arm. Then the rest of the body has to start to get that information and pass it along. And then it wants to let the mind know, because the mind has this whole other way of dealing with things. The body has immediate responses like run away, and the mind has this other process for solving these problems. So an emotion is a complex relationship between all these parts of our experience. Now, we've already practiced working with the thoughts, and that's what you can take some time to get good at that. But that's how we can work. It's one way you can interact with your emotional life. But there's a deeper way, and for us in the West, it's a more important way because we're so cut off from our body. To start to learn is to work with our thoughts through our body, work through our feelings, our emotions through our body. There's another important reason working with your body. If you're dealing with a difficult emotional life, working with your body is the place you want to start, is because it's underneath your mind, right? So if you start to pay attention, if you're scared, for instance, and your mind is saying you're scared, we'll just automatically believe that, right? So at first, it's easier to start with the body and go, I'm just have a vibration in my belly, right? There's no thoughts in the belly in our normal sense of it. So it can be easier to realize, to take yourself out of fear of the future or the past by just going into the present moment experience of the body. Going, oh, I'm scared, but intellectually I can see there's nothing actually dangerous here right now, but there is fear in my belly, but it's just this vibration. It's just this heat. It's just this flowing energy. It's just this tightness. It's just this expansion, whatever it is. Okay, so this is an incredibly useful thing to realize. How do you know what you're feeling in your body? It's exactly the same as any other feeling in the body. You pay attention to the basic sensory experience of it in 3 dimensions, in location. What's happening there? How does a feeling manifest in the chest? Well, it's hot or it's cold. It's tight or it's loose. It's expanding or it's contracting. It has a certain shape. It has a certain size. It could have painfulness. It could be sharp or not, dull. Like all the basic sensory experiences of your body apply to your emotions. That's how emotions are communicated to our conscious mind, So the only way to work with an emotion in the body through our conscious mind, with consciousness, is by paying attention to these sensory experiences. It's everything we've taught so far applies to this kind of practice. We can pick a part of our body and we can make this our meditation. We're going to focus on the belly. We've already done this, for instance. We'll focus on the breath in the belly. But we can now open to sensations that seem emotional. My teacher would call these feel in. Remember we said we're focusing out and now we're focusing in? So it would be the feeling sensations of your body that feel subjective, that feel emotional. So when I feel this table, it doesn't have any emotional quality to it for me, but I might feel a little anxiety in my throat, right? And that, although it's the same kind of stuff, has an emotional quality to it. Now, what this signals is these are the sensations that are important to you. That's really all that matters about this. But it can be useful. So up till we started focusing on the mind, we were practicing meditation in a way where we wanted to attend to things that were safe, easy, comforting, supportive, peaceful, relaxing, so on. As we develop that ability to sit in peacefulness, then we can start paying attention to and opening our mind to aspects of ourselves that are more difficult, more challenging, more central to our idea of ourself. So we turned last week towards our thoughts, which are more central to our idea of ourself, and also where our sense of our problems arises. And then we can now today, we can turn our attention to the feelings in our body that feel more central to our sense of ourselves. Those are our emotional feelings. So we might open to the belly, we might be breathing, but we might intentionally say, I'm going to focus on the feelings in my gut that have an emotional flavor to them. And I'm just going to feel what they're doing. I'm going to approach them with an attitude of acceptance. They're already here. I'm not trying to change them, fix them. I'm not trying to understand them or figure them out. I don't want to reject them or judge them. I'm just going to notice, how does my emotion, whatever it is, feel in my gut? Now, it can be useful to name it. That feels like fear, or it can be useful to think about what it might be about. It can be useful to do all those things just to get more clear where the feeling is in your gut. But the ultimate practice is to let go of your ideas, your names for the thing, your story about why you might be feeling that thing, and to just feel the emotion as pure sensation. Okay, so that's the basic practice. But I want to give another 5 minutes here or so on how this practice develops a little bit. So I've already given you a sense of what an emotion is for. An emotion is at its core a motivation. If you have an emotion, it's trying to get you to do something. At the very least, it's trying to get you to think something. But for the most part, even those thoughts are generally directed at behaviors. So it's getting you to run away or attack, to put it simply, to approach or to hide. These basic emotions, those are the basic idea. But if you're angry, it's going to get you to yell at someone or punch them. Or if you have a more complex anger manifestation like passive aggressiveness, it'll do something else. But it still is a source of motivation. So ultimately, listening to the feelings in our body that are emotional will be about letting those emotions move through their release. That doesn't mean doing the behavior that the emotion wants you to do. It's about feeling the whole emotion moving through your body. Most of us shut our emotions down because most of the behaviors that our emotions tell us to do, society says we shouldn't do, right? We're angry. our basic biology is to punch somebody. It's our basic biology. But we have such layers of psychology telling us not to do that, that we don't even, most of us, don't even think about punching people. We transmute that behavior desire into all these other ways, saying something mean, you know, giving them the cold shoulder, a whole bunch of other behaviors, right? But for the most part, we're putting a cap on that emotional energy and how it wants to move through our body. That energy builds up as we do not express it. The body remembers. And it's like, hey, we gotta, there's some anger in here I didn't get to use, right? And so when we start to, this is a warning, when we start to pay attention with acceptance to these feelings in our body, there's a well of energy in those emotions that we have not fully felt. And this can be challenging as it starts to come up. This is why we don't feel them, is because it's challenging to feel that much fear or that much anger or that much jealousy or whatever it is, or sadness or grief, or even love, by the way. For some of us, it can be challenging because we've been told that's scary. So what we need to have is a really good resource practice so we can alternate between feeling a little of our emotion and then going back to feeling peacefulness, grounding our experience. We don't need to feel it all at once, but we need to learn it's okay to feel it, because all it is, all the feeling in our body is a feeling in our body. Until it gets in the mind and starts telling us stories, right? It's just a feeling in our body. It's just a vibration. It's a heat. It's a pressure. It can be a big feeling. That is to be a lot of energy, a lot of heat, a lot of vibration, even pain. Physical pain can be part of these emotions, absolutely. But for the most part, 99.9% of the time, there's nothing dangerous about feeling these emotions. They're just vibrations in the body. I'll put a caveat there for real traumatic experiences and emotions that are tied into our traumas. There can be a danger if you go too deeply into your traumas without either some help from outside or real understanding of resource in your body that you can deepen the trauma experience. So that's why we want to really build our resource practice up. And so the one thing I'll tell you about that, and in general, is what we're going to try and practice is using our meditation to feel and experience our whole life exactly as it is without getting into overwhelm. If we start getting overwhelmed, and it's a little hard to define that, but you sort of know what it is when it happens, right? But overwhelm is when you no longer have the ability to control your attention anymore. So if you've been meditating for a while, doing the earlier practices, and you've got some concentration and you notice, yes, my mind wanders, but I can bring it back when I want to. I can bring it back when I notice, right? When you get overwhelmed, you start to lose the ability to bring your attention back. You get sucked into a memory, a thought pattern, an emotional pattern. So it's important to bring this up because it's not normally taught as part of meditation. There's a lot of safeguards built into the meditation practice historically. As I said, most of meditation is taught early on and with all this resource built in there. But it's not explicitly stated that sometimes, especially for those of us with severe trauma or even minor trauma, the meditation practice of accepting can get us into a territory that's maybe a little too big for us to deal with that day. And what we just want to become aware of is that possibility. And without fear, don't worry about it. It's okay if you get overwhelmed a little bit every now and then, but you don't want to be practicing in overwhelm all the time, because then you're just practicing being overwhelmed. So what we want to be practicing is concentration and acceptance of every part of our experience. And with respect to this practice, concentration and acceptance on the emotional feelings in our body, learning that it's okay to feel our feelings in our body. Now that phrase, it's okay to feel your feelings, we've heard that in society, right? There's at least one part of our society that's been trying to tell us that. But I want you to understand today what that actually means concretely. That means it's okay to feel anything that's happening in your body. Feel the sensations in your body. It's just sensations in your body. Now, ultimately, that also means it's okay to hear and see your thoughts as well that are associated with those feelings. So we want to develop the practice of having space enough around our feelings that we can see them as they are. What comes to mind is just to mention one other little warning sign. Sometimes we're working with an emotion in our body, and maybe we don't feel like we're overwhelmed. In fact, we can get so good at meditation that we can keep out of overwhelm, but we're actually not working with our emotion in a healthy way because there's not any space around it. It feels hard. Let's put it that way. Right? So there's like some sadness or there's some fear, and we're like, we're going to sit with it. And it's just like, oh, I just want this to be over. I want it to, it's just hard to sit with it. Right? That's normal and understandable. But that's a warning sign that you're that you're actually practicing resisting your feeling rather than accepting your feeling. So what you want to do is, without rejecting that feeling, say, okay, there's my feeling. I'm feeling it. It feels hard. And now I'm going to say, hey, feeling, I know you're still there. I want to feel all of you, but I want to also go over here and feel this. So you go over and you spend some time with resource at that point. And you find what it's like to feel yourself ground. And then you come back and give some attention to that feeling, either in that meditation or at a later date. This is ideal. Nothing, it's messier than this, of course, but this is a way of organizing how we would love to practice. We want to be building an attitude of acceptance to the whole of our experience, including the most difficult parts of our experience. Our thoughts, our challenging imagination, and our challenging emotions. And by the way, also our positive emotions. Some of us are not very accepting of our love or our compassion or our joy. If you're not feeling a lot of joy in your life, that's probably because you have a resistance to joy in your life. You might be surprised that you have that. But if you're not feeling it, it's probably because there's resistance, habits of resistance to feeling that joy, because your body says it's not safe. So what we want to practice is the ability to feel all our feelings without resistance to them. And so, as all practices, start easy and work towards more difficult. If it's feeling really difficult, make it easier. I've given you some ways to do that, but you can also figure it out on your own. This is feeling difficult. How can I make my meditation feel a little bit easier? Okay, that's good enough for today. So we're about to go into our sit. Please come join us if you want to.